It's recording now.
Oh. Hello, world. It's wonderful to see you.
They're all waving back. Yeah.
They're what?
They're all waving back.
Are they?
Yeah. No.
Okay, then I'm going to continue on in this way. Yeah. All right, so the video thing is a little nerve-wracking.
Forget it's there. It's
Okay.
just a computer and nobody's watching, so it's just you.
Okay. So this presentation is titled "In the Footsteps of the Buddha." My line of work these days, I always say the Buddha is my boss, because on a journey to India back in early 2013, I was invited to work in a documentary on a Hindu festival called the Kumbh Mela. That's actually how I ended up in India. And having never been, I decided to do something spiritual, and as a practicing Buddhist, something Buddhisty. So I did a little research, and I found out that the Buddha had said before he died, as quoted in the Mahaparinibbana Sutta, I'm paraphrasing, that any follower of the Tathagata's teachings would benefit greatly from going to the main places of the Tathagata's life. And that was where he was born, where he attained his enlightenment, where he taught for the first time, and where he died. So having read this, I looked on the map to see where all those places were, and they were in a fairly contained area and not so far from where this Kumbh Mela was, which was in Allahabad. So I went with the fella that I went over to India with, the one that was heading up this documentary, and we did Bodh Gaya together, and where the Buddha was enlightened and where he taught for the first time in Varanasi. So anyway, I tell you that because it was kind of spontaneous from the moment I decided to go and do this documentary until doing this tour. I was changed dramatically, and so I'm just going to start playing it and the presentation, because the first thing is a movie. So now I take people on spiritual pilgrimage in the footsteps of the Buddhas. It's my job, because I felt like the Buddha kind of asked me to do that. It was very spontaneous. I didn't think about any of this. It just happened, and now I'm in the middle of it, and it's wonderful. So that's why I say that he's my boss, and he's the best boss ever, because it's really my awakening journey that I'm in the middle of, and I call this my job. So, which is my job, to wake up, a fully awakened being, not just a partially awakened being. So I'm just gonna start. Oops, that's not what we do. We double click on it.
Just one click?
One click?
I think it's only one.
Yeah, somewhere in the movie. That's it.
Oh, but you guys can't hear it?
We can a little.
Okay, I'm gonna.
And just move the mouse away from the screen. Yeah.
Do you want to put it on the other?
I think it's okay for a small class.
It's just. Somebody that came on the pilgrimage made that for me. So that just gives you an overview. I like it. She did such a good job. I like to share it. So so the Buddha said that, and this is I'm gonna stand up and just because I'm not very tech savvy, so I made this and it's a little blurry. And oh, that's all right from back. So just to give you an idea of the area, here's the country of Nepal, and here's part of northern India. And here's Delhi. So most people, like from New York, you'd fly into Delhi, and it's just to give you a lay of the land. So you go over here. Okay. Okay, that's not okay. Here's where the Buddha was born, over the border of Nepal. And then where he was enlightened is down here. Now remember, back in those days, there was no flights and no trains and no buses. So this gives you a nice overview of where so this is right over the border of Nepal. You can see how close it is. And then he was enlightened here, taught for the first time here, and he passed away here. Now, when I take people, we go here, 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 here. Okay, because you can see logistically how that makes sense. When Hector and I go, we'll go here, here, up here, over, up, and over. So you can do it several different ways. But that gives you a logistics. So within the framework, we're talking it's a fairly small area because back in those days of the Buddha's life, he wasn't taking any transportation. They were walking mostly. I think they did have horses or mules, sheep, things to carry things maybe, but monks in those days, not so much, or ascetics, they would just go on foot. So that gives you the overview. Oh, this is me and Christian. That's the fella I did the documentary with. So this is just a fun, oh, maybe this is the other. This is the other one. This isn't the, okay. I put this, can you see her? I put this wonderful woman in this slideshow. This is the other presentation. This is not the one I was going to do tonight. Because she's the one who turned me on to going to the cave. So I have to rethink this. The reason is this isn't the presentation I was
Do you want to swap it?
do tonight. Can I do that?
Yeah, just
Okay.
exit.
Okay.
And then go to the other one after the gay wheel of death. Gay wheel. Do you understand?
Yeah, now
Yeah.
I get it.
Yeah.
I was thinking about your thing for Butchered Open Studios, and I was like,
Oh, the wheel of
I
death. No, that thing.
Yeah.
I get it all the time. Did you meet Rachel?
No.
You should
Hi.
know each other.
Hello, Rachel.
Yeah.
What's your name?
Abigail. She's
Abby.
yeah,
Abby.
Abby.
Yeah.
She's a burner, so you don't have to talk to her too much.
Did you eat a Subway sandwich? At Burning Man? Did you see the commercial that's going around?
No.
No.
Well, no, it's Quiznos.
Give Quiznos.
What's that?
You've seen
What
Something
is
about
that?
Quiznos and Burning Man. I saw it on Facebook.
No.
Quiznos is suing Burning Man? Burning Man is suing Quiznos? I don't know.
Why?
Oh, they made fun of Burning Man, I think, in one of their commercials.
They should not take that seriously. This brings back being in India.
Oh, isn't it fun?
Mm.
I love it. I miss it. Can't wait to go back. And see the faces of those who are in it. You and me, it's like new every day. I mean, it's new here every day. Okay, here we go.
Union Square.
Union Square. Every day, new day. Okay. Oh,
Let me see. What's this?
I have to take a photo of something different.
That's a great idea.
oh,
Let's do it whilst that.
Could you take a picture too?
Yeah, sure.
I just. No, Now I'm gonna tell everything from the rest of the time. It's like this.
I can hear the hard drive thinking.
Oh god,
Your
this poor hard
phone's so
drive.
small.
It's the 4 years. I don't know about
Yeah, no,
anybody
but
else
I
with a
had
Mac.
the
Mine
same.
lasts 4 years.
You know what I did? I backed it all up, and then I reinstalled everything,
Yeah, that
and
would
it
be good.
worked. Okay.
Yeah, that's what I need to do.
Yeah.
I
But
just
I
got
had the same
worried
problems.
From my, I don't have my discs. I don't know where they are.
So how is it to be back while we wait for that? How is it for you to find the New York mandala after
Oh,
being
the New
away
York
for so
mandala.
long?
Oh yeah, wonderful. I'm so happy to be here. You know, I have so many interesting connections with people here.
Hmm.
A lot of people. I don't know if I'll see all of them or even a quarter of them, but it's just nice being.
Yeah.
Spent a lot of time in New York, you know, as a student. And, I mean, this is the room where my teacher got ordained. You know,
Hmm.
it's like a real, you know, New York is a very powerful place for me. I didn't start coming here really until I became a Buddhist.
Hmm.
So, yeah, ooh, there it is. Oh, we love the logo, and it's so awesome.
Is that a Buddha with a hula hoop?
Why did you say that? Oh my god! Did you
I mean, because you were hula hooping.
I know, at Deer Park. With the birds on for the first time. I can't help it.
The first hula hooping in Deer Park.
Was that at
We
the
did
temple?
yoga, we hula hooped. I played the flute. Kids were loving us. We had huge groups of people coming over. It was so much fun, you know. I can't help it. It's still me. So, all right, back to business here. Okay, so the Shakyamuni Buddha, right? He was this amazing character, but before he became the Buddha, his name was Siddhartha Gautama. That was the name that his parents gave to him. So in order to understand, so I'm doing this presentation because the reason that I take people on tour, besides the fact the Buddha said to do it, and it was overwhelmingly transformational for me personally, is because as a Buddhist, a Western Buddhist, so to speak, I just knew I knew one thing, that I wanted to get out of suffering. And I knew that before I became a Buddhist. It's just that the Buddhist presentation was kind of the answer to my prayers. I wanted something clear, and I wanted it, contained, because I wanted the steps out of suffering. And Buddhism kind of delivered that to me on a silver platter, and I came to Buddhism through my yoga practice. So I was going to all the yoga teachings, and my yoga teachers were Buddhists. So this was a natural progression. So the Buddha's life story is kind of weaved in and out. There's a lot of stories because there's like a lot of interpretations of what the Buddha's teachings were. I mean, the Buddha wasn't a Buddhist. He was actually a yogi meditator. So when I did the pilgrimage, everything went into perspective, kind of all the political parts of Buddhism and all the different schools of Buddhism, and then seeing them in person, like you see Vietnamese and Cambodians and Thai and Tibetans and Indians and Chinese, all there in Bodh Gaya where the Buddha, and on these pilgrimage places. And everything just got so clear, about me and who I was and what my practice is, because I was getting caught up maybe in something that was moving away from the actual journey of the awakening process, which is what the Buddha, when he was Siddhartha Gautama, what happened to him. So he was born to the Shakya clan. So I've actually met people with that name, that Shakya is a caste, and I've met them in Nepal, in that area. So he was born to, this was not written down during the time of the Buddha, so that's something you need to premise it, because living now, I literally live in the footsteps of the Buddha. You hear different stories, which is wonderful. It's like part of why I love it. So I hear words of mouth, coming from different families and different who have lived in, say, Bodh Gaya or Sarnath or Kushinagar or Lumbini, for generations, So there's something to be said about that. And then living in the story and meditating in it, you kind of get your own feelings about what happened. So what I do is I tell stories of the Buddha's life as I have internalized it, but not too much as to not give people the opportunity to have their own experiences, because this is a pointing out. The Buddha was pointing. He couldn't tell us. I mean, there is a way out of suffering, right? But the journey begins with each of us, not with, it's inside of us, right? So for me, it was important to recognize that, and you'll see how it happened in a little while. So here's the general area, and the Buddha was born in the Shakya clan, right? His father was King Shodadana, and his mother was Queen Maya Devi. And, there's all these stories about him being in palaces and stuff, but the truth was they're not sure if he was what he was. They think he was that he was an elected official, actually, and that he was a very good king in a small community. And, but there was a oracle at his birth who said he was either going to be an excellent ruler or an excellent mendicant or ascetic, a realized being, so to speak. And of course his father wanted him to follow in his footsteps and to become the next king. So he made the prince's Siddhartha's life so that he kept him secluded from kind of normal things that a human would experience. And also in some of the books it says that we don't know what his religion was. And a lot of the books say his father kept him away from religion and just general human ideas, like human suffering. So a lot of people say, oh, he was a Brahmin, he was this, he was that. But actually, it's also said that his father kept him from those things so that he would be sheltered at that level. I mean, that's pretty intense. So what happened? Well, what happened, I think the more important, and this is the pointing out, right, to each of us, is that at some point he saw his charioteer's name was Chana. And with Chana, he saw, what was the first thing he saw? He saw a sick person. An old person. He saw an old person and he was like, what is that? Now that's hard for me to believe. This is how I can start to decipher between myth and reality, because he was watching himself get older and he's watching his parents get older. He's watching people are getting older. But he saw this like really old person and he saw death and decaying, and then he went out again and he was like so curious because he had been patted and everything was so good, and he basically had everything a human he didn't want for anything, but he was also not given anything else, so that there was nothing for him to want. He probably didn't understand what that was. So he saw an aging man, and then he saw a corpse, and then he saw an ascetic. And it was explained to him that an ascetic was somebody that was seeking freedom from old age, sickness, and death. And that caused him to have an understanding that he couldn't really help a kingdom of people. He couldn't help his child, he couldn't help his wife, he couldn't help his father, he couldn't help the people that he loved. So, he had that moment of clarity where he said he needed to go, and he wanted to go out and become this mendicant. And so he left the palace. And one of the stories is that he takes his hair and he chops it off, and then he casts it away. And the hair gets planted in this place in Nepal, and now there's these Bodhi seeds that grow there. There's only like one place in Nepal where these Bodhi seeds grow. This tree grows, and now they're very sought after. And so there's all these stories about the Buddha's life, but the more important thing is, like, what does it mean to us now, in our lives now? And to me, him leaving the palace like with all the riches and all the women and all the food and all the shelter and all the clothing, the thing that needs, what humans need to thrive, wasn't enough for him. He needed to know, so he sought after this thing we call enlightenment, or the awakening. So what is that? What is awakening? It's like, well, in this case, it's seeking the deeper understanding about old age, sickness, and death. And he understood that an ascetic was one of those people that was getting to the truth of that. What is it? What's caused, and how to maybe stop it. But as we all know, it's a process. So he leaves that space of comfort in the middle of the night, and they say he had a baby, but he was 29 years old when he left the palace. So I'm like, he got married at 16. Are you telling me his wife didn't have her baby? Yashodhara is his wife, so, these are questions that you ask yourself, did his wife really not get pregnant until she was 29? Living in India, Nepal, like, no. She had a baby at 16. I'm like, but she gave him a son, and that was that. She didn't have to have any more, right? So, so there's all these wonderful anecdotes, to think about the Buddha's life and to figure out what it means to you, right? So he leaves the palace, like that's an aha moment. That is a letting go. He had to let go of all the people he loved. He loved his wife, and his son's name was Raul. So there's Raul, Yashodhara, there's the king, there's the mom. Okay, so the mother had died 7 days after his birth. They say she either died in childbirth or up to 7 days after. We don't actually know. He was actually raised by his mother's sister, who's God, I always forget her name. It's like Pajita. Anyway, Mahapajita. She actually becomes the first ordained woman that he ordained. So that's a great part of the story. And, she was a warrior. See, the Shakyas were warriors. She was the sister of the mother from the Quilian part of Nepal. So, but she got all the women from Koilian and this other part, Kapalavastu, which is where the palace was, to go to the Buddha. And they marched. They weren't going to take no for an answer. And he wasn't not ordaining people because he didn't think women could get enlightened, that they weren't equally valid. It's just that he thought it was dangerous for them. So that's why they have extra vows. Is like, I know one of them is that two have to go out together. So anyway, I digress. But it's all part of it because it all comes from living in that area. So, he has this aha moment, right, where he's leaving everything behind to make this pilgrimage for himself, this journey. He made a commitment, and he leaves his home. That part just blows my mind, that courage that we have to leave, or to make this jump to this path of enlightenment. And then he goes to... on his journey, right? So does he know where he's going? No, right? Come on. So on his journey, he meets some teachers that teach him things, right? They always refer to these teachers as yogi meditators. So there were two in particular of these teachers that he had. And the first one, the Siddhartha was practicing what he was being taught, and he was so good that this teacher said, will you lead now for me? I'm getting old and I need somebody to take over for me. But the Buddha was like, he knew that wasn't it. So he said, thank you, but no thank you. And he left and went on his way. He didn't say, I'm not practicing what this guy was teaching me. He was still practicing, but it wasn't it, it was just part of the path. And then he comes upon this other yogi teacher, and he teaches him, and again, Siddhartha has some great realizations and was asked by this teacher to then lead. He was also getting old. And Siddhartha again kindly says, thank you, but no thank you. This is not it. You know, he wasn't there yet. So he was able to take the teachings, apply the teachings, have realizations, but he wasn't at that level of total enlightenment yet. And he was like, didn't want to get stuck in the, I think in the modern day, we'd say like, I don't know, you need to move on. You need to keep going until you get there, right? So that's what he did. And then he meets these other fellas that are meditating, these practitioners. And they go up into, oh my God, I totally forgot about my presentation. That is so funny. I don't know what's going on. Oh, because we haven't even gotten to the place where he's born yet. So this is all preliminary to the four major stages of his life, right? He was born because he's, okay, I did go past. Okay, he's born. All right, we're still in the born place. He's born in Lumbini because his mother, Maya Devi, is from Kolian. So she's on her way to Kolian because in those days it was traditional for the mother to give birth in her father's village. So she has to walk from Kapala Vastu, where she marries her guy, and she goes off down, but she's going there and she has her baby. And this is like a famous picture. This is just, I like this drawing of it. And she has him under a sal tree. It says that a branch leaned over and she held onto the branch and then he came out of her right side. And then he came out looking like a 2-year-old and walking on lotus flowers. That's the story. And this is where it happened. And that's why, this is an old picture. I took a picture of this on a wall. This is like what it looked like before they redid it. And this is what it looks like now. So if you come, you'll see this. And it's the same thing, except a little nicer. And look at the camera was nicer too. Okay, so inside that white building, you've been there?
No.
No? Okay, so inside the white building you can't take pictures. This is the actual place, and it's an archaeological site. They're still digging, and I don't know if you heard this, but on the news they were like, they found some rock that they're saying he was born even earlier than they thought he was. So you can't take any pictures in there, but it's cool. There's like this wooden track, we'll call it, that you can like circumambulate inside. And you can, I always sit against the wall and meditate, and other people do too. It's like anything goes. I love that about India and Nepal. Anything goes. You can do whatever you want anywhere. So, and then these are my friends, Maria and Peter. My phone was on this, I had this funny filter going on, and I just love that picture. How cool is that? So you can see the Ashokan pillar behind you. So this is part of the history. 100 years after the Buddha died, there was this king Ashoka. He was literally the king of pretty much all of India except for Kerala, what's now Kerala, and Tamil Nadu. And he was an intense warrior. He went into fight with this other kingdom and then had this like aha moment himself where he was like, what are we doing this for? Why am I killing all these people for what? Why are we even on this earth, you know, if we're just going to kill each other? So he became a Buddhist, you know, and that was it. He like really, it was because of King Ashoka that we know a lot of the things about the Buddha's life. So we really have to give him all the props for that. And he built these pillars. You can see it. See that pillar in the background? And that's like 2,500 years old. And there's 10 of them left on the planet. And it marks a place, a main place of the Buddha's life. And this was the place where he was born. So at this site, there's this big tree, and Hindus really love to pray at trees. Now the Hindus think of the Buddha as the 9th incarnation of Vishnu. So there's Peter making an offering. There's the tree. You can see monks meditating in the back. There's some tourists over to the right. And then here's some monks. It's so beautiful looking at the spot. There's some nuns and some monks from all over the world. It's just so beautiful. There's me. Had a good hair day that day. There's the pillar. And then this is in Lumbini. So in Lumbini, it's this big, huge trust. So it's like, I don't even know the exact number, but like hundreds of acres. It's huge. And there's all these temples now. that have been built and are being built, and there's a museum still being built, in honor of the birth of the Buddha, right? The Buddha meaning the awakened one. And the reason that they call him the Buddha is he was the first one in that era, on that particular era. I can't remember the name of the era. This is this, I don't have any video of it, I wish I did, but this is like this canal, this man-made canal, and they have this boat that will actually, it's so big and so long that they will actually transport you from one end of the river to the next, and it takes you, like, you bypass like a lot of stuff. It's huge. I can't wait for you guys to see it. And but then there's like this broken down boat, you know, 'cause it's still, you know. So this particular morning was a full moon morning. I was heading off to a temple, and it was a really, really powerful thing. So one thing that the Buddha does, right, is he taught us about compassion and love and kindness, and that was a way out of suffering, right? Makes sense. It's not rocket science. And on this particular morning, I showed up the day before, and I meet this girl in my bunk, and she's like, let's go to this thing. And I get there, and I've been contemplating a lot about the struggle between China and Tibet. I was really, this wasn't my first time here, and I'd already been living with a lot of Tibetans, and the pain in the hearts of the Tibetans was, and as a Tibetan Buddhist, I was like, why? This is still such a quiet subject, you know, and I was just contemplating about karma and about cultures and how we're still warring with nations, and I get to Lumbini on this the night before, the day before, and that morning it looks like this. It's like foggy, right? And there's all these Buddhists with all their different color robes. Look at this, the beautiful orange and pink, these nuns. Oh. And I get to the service. It was at like 6:37 in the morning. It was a sunrise service. Here. And this is, normally you don't take pictures in this temple. It's like the oldest temple. And then every different group of Buddhists could sign up to chant in their own language. And so after having this like contemplation, and just, I show up at this temple in the morning, and the Chinese are chanting to the Buddha and about compassion and kindness, and the Tibetans are chanting, the Vietnamese and the Cambodians and the Thai, and I cannot explain to you how amazing it was for me. I was like, see, within the eyes of an awakened one, there is no borders, there is no suffering. In that moment, I had this experience, this visceral experience of there was no suffering in that moment. You know, we were just singing, and you know when there's music, you're just like, heart is open. I was like, oh, okay, and this is a funny story. So I'm in the temple, and then after, you know, tears are coming, and I'm just like meditating and listening, and it was just epic and beautiful. And this is in the place of the Buddha's birth. And then at the end, they're feeding us, and it was just like I was hungry. It was perfect. And then they came around with envelopes. And I said to my friend Maria from Australia, I said, oh, I know what that is. They want money. After having this experience, it just shot out of me. Like, and it was just, okay, so then I was contemplating, like, okay, money, putting it in, and I opened the envelope, and there's money in it. And I said, oh my God, I got a used envelope. It's already got money in it. And I realized that they were giving me money. That's what was happening. They were giving us money. And Maria's like, oh my God, it's exactly the amount I need to do this thing. And you know, all these miracles are happening. And then I take her, she had been at the place of the Buddha's life, staying at the Korean temple for like a month. She was waiting to do this Vipassana retreat. And she had never visited the temple because it costs 200 rupees. And I went, you're coming with me, sister. And I gave her 200 rupees. Well, I didn't even give it to her, I just paid for her ticket, and we went in. And it was just such a magical, you know, it's just, life is so magical, you know, and it was just funny because there I was, all this contemplation, and then the peace, and then me, I know what that is, you know, and I could just see how the mind is just so quick, you know, to take its signals and to make assumptions. And it was just fun. And so here's that morning in the temple. And then, oh, here, I'll just sit on that for a second because it was so beautiful. People from all over the world praying for peace. And then the Japanese culture is really motivated. They build these beautiful peace pagodas in a lot of places. There is one in Lumbini. And it when I finally got out there, because it's such a big place, you know, I mean, it's like Disneyland in the sense that you could spend, or like Burning Man, that's like you need more than a week, you know, to see the place. And yeah, it was a full moon, it was sunset, it was remarkable. And then there's this eternal flame that goes, and you can rent bikes, and I like to rent bikes and ride bikes around. Oh, you can see the boat. I love boats and I love water, so I was like, boats, water, oh my god. It's like you never know what you're gonna get. An eternal flame, bikes. I hadn't ridden a bike when I rented a bike in Lumbini in like so long. I was like a little kid. So there's Christian. Oh, he's such a sweetheart. So this gives you an idea. There's all this, all these cultures, Ashoka sent his kids, he had a son and a daughter, he sent them to Sri Lanka to spread the word of the Buddha. And you can see how the Buddhism got spread in that way, and then it was the Indians who took it into Tibet. So Nepal, all these, Vietnam, Korea, China, France, Austria, Germany, United Trungpan Buddhist Foundation of Nepal, Japan, Germany. It's just amazing. And there's a stupa. Hatred never ceases by hatred. Hatred ceases through love. This is an unalterable law. Buddha. That's an old stupa they're renovating. So this is interesting. So there's always this depiction of the Buddha doing this. And I used to go to a lot of Grateful Dead shows. I wouldn't consider myself a Deadhead, but I did enjoy going to festivals and concerts. And I was like, what's this up with the Buddha? Does he need a ticket? And I'm going to show you, there's all these monasteries, nunneries, Myanmar, Cambodia, Thailand. Beautiful. Life becomes full and complete only when the heart is filled with the radiant goodness. Be happy. Okay, there's a closer up one, and here's a good one. See? Can you see all these, like, he's like this, he's like this, he's like this. This is the newest statue in Lumbini. So one day I asked a monk, me and Christian asked a monk, this was the first time Christian came, it was my second time. And we're like, what does that mean? This rocked my world. He said, because the Buddha, there's only one way to enlightenment, and that's your way. And I was like, yes! Yes! So that's kind of like our mascot for Middleweight Tours. There's only one way to enlightenment, and it's... So here's the, to get us back on track, we're in Lumbini right now where the Buddha was born, right? So it's a powerful place to come and contemplate what his being born has meant to us. Because it certainly has changed my life. And so it reminds me of that talk we had, the Skype meeting, the legacy. His legacy has lasted 2,600 years. He himself didn't think it would last more than 500. So the question is, what legacy are each of us leaving in this world? And are we happy with the legacy that we're leaving right now? And if there's anything we're not happy with, then it is time to step back and take a look and assess what things need to be shifted and changed. So from Lumbini, we go down to Bodh Gaya because he made his way down to the Bodh Gaya area, which is in Bihar state, the current Bihar state. So when he left the palace, so he gets born, he's the king, and he's 29, and he finally sees old age, sickness, and death. He leaves and he walks as an ascetic. Meets 2 teachers. He's now having meditative realizations, and he's still on his path to enlightenment. He's still not there yet. He's had lots of realizations, but he's not there yet. Sound familiar? And then he gets to Bodh Gaya, what's now Bodh Gaya. And outside of Bodh Gaya, and I'm telling you this is the life story of the Buddha mixed with my experience in pilgrimage, because I can only go from my experience. I'll never be able to share this other than my own experience. And I find out, I get there and immediately meet this Scottish lady that's created that one I had up on the thing before. And she's like, have you gone to the caves? Have you gone to the caves? And Christian and I, we just got here last night. We haven't gone to the caves. And she's like, you gotta go to the caves. It's where Siddhartha Gautama was meditating before he became the Buddha. And we're like, you got us at the caves, lady. You know, and it was just so awesome. She called us a tuk-tuk, and off we went to the caves. And this changed my life. I mean, this was it. My personal journey started here, actually. I went from Delhi to Bodh Gaya right into these caves. I wasn't in India 48 hours before. I was sitting in the cave where Siddhartha Gautama was meditating with those 5 ascetics before he attained enlightenment. So when you get there, there's all these crazy pictures, depictions of him emaciated, completely skin and bones. Beautiful, beautiful pictures of an emaciated man. You know, one thing about Siddhartha was that he was beautiful, and he was from a warrior caste. So he had been trained with his body. That's why even after cutting all his hair off and shaving his head, people knew who he was just by looking at the shape of his body. They knew who he was. Isn't that interesting? And here he is, like frail and skin and bones, because on his journey he meets these guys, and they take it to an extreme asceticism, mortification stuff, and self, you know, like hurting yourself and all that. You know, anything to get awake, right? This is an old statue. It's like 2,000 years old. And there's the mountain that you drive to from Bodh Gaya. You go through all these rice fields when it's that season. And it's just beautiful. And then that's what it looks like from a distance. And then here it is. I mean, okay, so it wasn't just one cave. 6 guys were not sharing a cave together. There's many caves in the area, but this is the cave that everybody goes to. And there it is right there. I'll put a little cursor on it. So if you can imagine, if any of you have been to India, I know you have, Peter, the fact that I got a picture with not a human in it is like a miracle.
Yeah.
I was
Surprised
looking at
too.
this, it's like, oh my gosh. But, you know, there are times when there's nobody there. And I've been there so many times. I've actually been there quite a lot.
There's always a guy staying.
Oh, there's the monks that live in
Yeah.
the house, yeah. So there's what it looks like normally. This is a Sri Lankan group. And this is what it'll look like when there's a group of Argentinians and Americans. There's other places to go if the spot's taken. But I have to say, I had a real connection with this woman that's in her prayer mode. You know, you don't need to speak the same language to have such deep connections with people. And such a deep connection with her. It's incredible. And there's this statue in the cave. And I just love this photograph Christian took this. It's just so beautiful. So here he is, Siddhartha Gautama, just like, you know, Hector Marcel and Abigail, Karina, Julia. And there we are in the cave. Somebody offered to take our photograph. There's a priest, a Hindu priest that sits in there, and it's called the Mahakala Cave, so he's at the Mahakala statue, and he's all about, so I have the Hindu from getting blessed by the priest. And there's my friend Anita after she came out of the cave. And there's Peter. So I wonder if the video will play. Oh, yeah. This is a Chud practitioner. So I love him, this man right here. He was there. It was funny. You never know what you're going to get, right? Every time I go, it's always different, for me and for everyone else. And where you saw the Sri Lankans in another picture, this man had his entire setup, and he was doing his prayers. And at one point, he stood up with his damaru and his bell, and he just started singing and praying. And I just sat and was there with him, my friend who took this video. And, there's this incredible power, that's why I call it the power places. It's a power place on the earth. People for thousands of years have been coming to this place. So when the Buddha was meditating, he was doing these ascetic practices, and then what happened was he left the cave to go bathe in the river. This is the other section. That's where the big Sri Lankan group was. He was sitting in the cave meditating, and he goes down to the river to bathe, and he falls in the river, and he almost dies because he doesn't have enough strength to get himself out of the river, right? But he did get out of the river, and he didn't die. So there he was in that moment where, I don't know if any of you have almost died. I have. And so I know that moment when you go, holy mother of God, I almost just died. And you have this something happens, of course, it's a natural thing. And, I'm assuming he had the same thing happen to him. Your kind of whole life, you just check in very quickly with everything that you're doing, and you realize what you need to give up and what to take up. And in that moment, I'm guessing, I'm not him, but he had that realization where what he had been doing for 6 years wasn't working because he still wasn't enlightened. And it was time for him to move on, just like he had with the other yogi meditators. And so he leaves these guys, and he's emaciated, and he just walks away, and he comes to a tree. And then we get into, there we are again. This just gives you an idea of how beautiful the nature is in this spot. And there are monkeys, and there are beggars, but there is nature and there is beauty with all of us, even the beggars and the monkeys. They're not very aggressive. Beggars are a little aggressive. They're cute too. We get to Sujata. So Sujata, this is one of my favorite aha moments of the Buddha's life. Yeah, so it says this is the ancient place where Sujata, a village Senani, they now call the village Sujata after her, had offered milk and rice to Siddhartha under a banyan tree. So Siddhartha left the ascetics, and he is probably assessing now what to do with his life. This isn't working, and I'm so weak. And then along comes Sujata. She's the princess of Sunani, and she can't get pregnant. Her whole history. That is a very interesting history. I've heard her history from word of mouth. It's really fun getting, from lineages of people whose families have grown up in that area. And she couldn't get pregnant. And her husband was okay with it, but she was not okay with it. Because even today in the Indian culture, it's like, you've got to have a baby, and preferably, of the male persuasion. So she can't get pregnant. Apparently she had some real darkness going through her to the point where she wasn't even praying anymore, but she had this lady that helped her out a lot, and apparently on this one day she talked her into making a special offering and taking it to the tree, to the banyan tree. And she gets there and she makes this milk, rice, and jaggery offering. And she thinks that the tree spirit takes the food, but it's actually an emaciated Siddhartha Gautama. And he eats it and gets his strength back. Clearly one bowl of this is not going to help him. So really, she actually nursed him back to health. But the aha moment comes when he's an ascetic and a woman is making an offering to him. And he accepts the offering. An ascetic taking an offering from a woman even today can be a thing. So he had to let go of all his cultural biases and imprint and, the shoulds, everything about everything he's ever known, came up for him, just like with all of us. If we're on this awakening path, there's going to be things that present ourselves that we need to let go of, that are belief systems that were given to us, that no longer are serving us, And this was a moment for him, and he accepted the offering, and then she ends up nursing him back to health, and of course she gets pregnant and has a boy. So we're really happy for her. So I'm just going to read this. A generous lady named Sujata offered Siddhartha matupayas rice with special milk, and 100,000 kapana gold pan under banyan tree. When he finished his meal, he floated the pan on the Naranchara river and prayed that if he was to become enlightened, then the pan would float upstream. If not, the pan would float downstream. The pan floated against the current and sunk deep down to the river base at Naga World, which was at the same place where all the previous 3 Buddhas, namely Gakusado, Konadorn, and Gasapo. So you learn things. I liked this because I learned something when I read this. I was like, wow, that was the last 3 names of the last 3 Buddhas. It's really fun. And so the pan apparently swam upstream, and so that gave him the hoorah to go forth on his mission. So here's the statue of Siddhartha with her female companion, and the Siddhartha Gautama, of course, the cow. And there's Peter hugging the tree. And there's Julie hugging the tree. And then there's Julie, Maria, and Peter just sitting and hanging out at the tree. It's really great to be able to meditate in all these places. We meditate on the story of the Buddha's life so that you can incorporate the understanding of what happened. And then we move on to Bodh Gaya, because that's what the Buddha did. He went from this tree where Sujata nurses him back to health to a place, right? Isn't this like Buddhism 101? It's like finding a conducive place to meditate. Well, he finds a peepal tree, P-I-P-A-L, a peepal tree, which people call a Bodhi tree. And a Bodhi tree has these big canopies and like gorgeous shade. I mean, whole families could live under them. It's great. And he finds a tree that's just out of the village, the main village, where people, remember, like we saw before, the big tree in Lumbini, where Hindus go and they make their offerings. And so he's, smart. He's an ascetic. He's been doing this for a while, with the begging bowl. So he knows that people are going to come and make offerings to the ascetic, because that's what they do as they're at the tree. So he's found a conducive place to meditate. And he then vows not to move from this place until he finds the truth. So where is he finding this truth? Is it out here, Is it here? No, it's inside. It's inside. So he sits with everything he needs. Doesn't have to move it. They say it took 49 days. And this is a great video. This was a very special occasion. It was, that's why it's so busy. It's not usually that busy.
Is it Monday?
Yeah, it was a Monday.
Everyone's going to work.
Yeah. There was a festival.
So it's Monday.
It's always Monday. Look at this, I love this. Isn't that cute? The beggars, I know them. It's just funny. I didn't even realize it until I put up the video. It's like, oh my god, I see them all the time. This fella, he's blind, and they beg, but you see he's got his drum. A group of them sit outside the Mahabodhi temple, like in the town of Bodh Gaya, and they sing and they chant, Hindu chants. They're so amazing. It's so, really, wow, it's amazing. And then this is my goat friend. I just love him. I love that animals can just be free, you know? There's so much beauty in that to me. So this is the Mahabodhi temple. So Ashoka, King Ashoka, remember, he became a Buddhist and he built this temple. I mean, this is like 10th generation. It wasn't obviously this big. And now it's this huge area. Really nice. There's 3 rings to go around it just around the tree. So, I mean, it takes me like 10 minutes at least to walk around one time around the top. And then like a few minutes. Oh, maybe 10 minutes 5 minutes around the bottom. Anyway, so this marks the spot where the Buddha attained his enlightenment, right? And, yeah. So this is the temple. And then you'll see, here's the actual tree. This is the 5th generation of the original tree. I mean, many things happened. It used to be a forest, you know, and there's forest fires. But original seeds were taken to Sri Lanka, and that's where the seeds that grew this tree came from. And so this is where people go, and this is where Siddhartha was sitting for 49 days and had his ultimate aha moment, right? Where he understood the truth of suffering, that life was suffering and that suffering is caused, and that there's a way out of suffering, and then he taught the way out of suffering, right? And that's why we're here in this room, surrounded by these beautiful images, because we understand at some level that about suffering, right? So here's the beautiful spot where he attained his total. You've been there. I love this tree. Look at how big it is. I mean, you can't even tell. And then there's tons of these trees in the whole park, and so there's shade everywhere. It's really nice, especially because it's open all year round. It can get pretty hot. And there's Christian looking through it's so cute, at the tree. So I'll tell you a funny story. Everybody wants a Bodhi leaf, right? But you can't pick them. So it's just like they say, if it's your karma to get a Bodhi leaf, it's your karma to get a Bodhi leaf. And one time Christian and I were there basically during the monsoon season, and they had closed off this side. There's the mirroring side on the opposite side. And he's like a little kid, and he comes up to me one day with like leaves and sticks, and I'm like, wow, Christian, that's amazing. And he's like, come. So we go over, and this had been roped off, and there was just the tree. It does its thing, and in the monsoon season, wind is coming and rain is coming, and then it was just like, I was like, wow, okay, the mother load, but it was roped off, and there was a security guard. And so at this one time, I mean, obviously he went over the rope before. And so we had the security guard. It was such a beautiful exchange, because the security guard was like he knew, and he was like, he went over and he gathered up all the stuff and he handed them to us. I've had so many incredible Bodhi leaf experiences. One day I was in I was not with a tour, and I was just having some deep stuff come up. That's all. if I was just in plain old America, I'd say I was having a crappy day. But I was just having a lot of deep stuff, and India can be intense, and I was just having a hard day. And there was this Baba there, and he was with this group of other people, and he was just quiet, and he was just looking at things, and I was just kind of looking at him, and he had the dreadlocks all up, but he had an energy unlike any other Baba that he just seemed very humble. There's a lot of fake Babas and there's a lot of real Babas or whatever, but they're aesthetics, they wear orange and, they have the long dreadlocks and they wear them up, and, he just seemed so raw and pure. And so my heart was so devastated that day that I felt comfort just being near him, whether he looked like any of us or anyway, I just felt good next to him. And it was funny because I was kind of getting closer and closer. The closer I got, the more I needed to cry. And I could cry thinking about it because it just was coming through. I didn't really have any thoughts about anything. It was just coming through. And then the group he was with found him, and we were dead on looking at the Bodhi tree. And his family came up and they were very quiet. They're very quiet people, and they were like, okay, it's time to go. And he was really old, and he was like, okay. And then he just handed me a Bodhi leaf. He just turned around, looked at me in the eyes, and he just handed me a leaf. And I just was like, it's just, there's so many layers of letting go, in that moment, I just let go of so much because it was just a perfect moment. There was very few people there, and it was just this old, sadhu. I really want to call him a sadhu. And it was just like, he just gave me this pure offering, and it was just like, okay, I can do this, And that's life, right? You can be walking down the street in Manhattan and have that happen. It's in whatever way it's going to transfer to you. For me, it was a little guy with a Bodhi leaf. Oof, that day. So, yeah. And there's me meditating. Christian took that. It's a good picture. We're friends on Facebook. You've seen this before. So then one day, I just love this picture because there was a peaceful demonstration, and it was just, people were just chanting prayers about awakening and about love and compassion. And they had these cute handwritten signs. Wake up, the United Nations organizations. This was when there were a lot of self-immolations happening in Tibet. And these people were just, they don't know, they were just expressing themselves in a very peaceful way, and it was just nice to see. There were just huge crowds, and I was just acknowledging, and I was just being there with them, This was a puja that was happening one day by Bhutanese, a Bhutanese bunch of monks. And they had this beautiful puja, and they were just praying and singing, and this was one of the horn guys, and the drums. And it's interesting when you're there, you see how it's very similar. So these were Bhutanese monks, but they are using the same instruments as the Tibetans use. And so you realize there's only borders where we put them. It's just, we now call it Bhutan and Tibet and China and India, but it's an area. Everybody kind of looks similar, and then they have the similar instruments. And here's a woman, she's on her board, she's probably studying on her iPad. I love it, doing her prayers. You just see people doing prayers. And then there's a dog, I love the dog. And she was probably there doing her prostrations. This is a video, actually. So this is people circumambulating. So when I'm on the tour, I'm not giving you guys, I'm just giving you bits and pieces of the Buddha's life, because, he had these letting goes and these awakening moments leading up to his total awakening, and that's what's happening for us. And one of the things that I've realized in my life is that I'm in it. I'm in the awakening process. I'm in it right now, like emptiness, right? It's here right now. It's not something I have to attain or get or whatever. It's just, for some reason, I haven't seen it directly. Like, I haven't had the realization of directly knowing what that is inside of me. But it doesn't mean it's not here right now, you know? So that's why, like, the temple is the self, right? The guru lives within, you know? People like us who have either done it or are in the middle of doing it or, you know, are going to do it, are pointing to others. That's all a Buddha can do, you know, is be the change, you know, for everyone else. And then there's this giant statue, which I love. So magnificent, right? It's in Bodh Gaya.
Mm-hmm.
And there's Sunil Sharma and Larry Wolf. Sunil's one of my he's one of my very dear friends and my brother now, but he helps me when I have pilgrims.
I like him.
People. Oh, you know Sunil.
Sorry guys, do you mind if I turn on the fans?
Oh no, I don't know.
Okay.
Do you want the AC instead?
Not necessarily the AC, but the fans certainly are like melting in there.
Okay.
Yeah, that's good. Thank you. Here's me and the Buddha. And here's just some. Oh, this is now okay. So, in the life of the Buddha, when he was in Bodh Gaya, right? So now you've been from where he's born to going back home, right north. It's just very close, 25 minutes. So how long would it take you to walk a 25-minute car ride? You got to do the math on your own. And then he leaves the palace and he goes to this place in Bodh Gaya. And then he's meditating in the caves. I mean, there's lots of stuff that happens in between. You know, he didn't just go there. And now he's attained his awakening, right? He's done it. And then he wasn't going to teach. He just was like not going to teach. And the story goes that Brahma came to him and begged him to teach and said, because he said, I can't. That ignorance is ignorance, you know? And nobody will get this. And, you know, Brahma said, but some will. So please teach, please teach, please teach. And so he agreed. And actually, you know, we don't know who his first students are, but if you look at it the way it's talked about in some of the history books, it's these two lay people, actually. In the Bodh Gaya area, he taught to first. He shared information with them. And then he went to find these 5 ascetics that had been in the cave. He knew they were in this park in outside of Varanasi. So this is, I like to show this to people, modern day people, because this is modern day Varanasi, which is one of the oldest inhabited cities on the planet, and is one of the most magical places on earth, as far as I am concerned. And Abby's been there. And this is just giving you a little flavor of what India's like, if you've never been.
It's more crowded than New York.
It's way more crowded. This is a mellow day. A lot of sweater vests. Cows. I just do little snippets. But yeah, really fun. It's just so, I mean, never a dull moment. So, so next he goes to Varanasi, actually, of course, because the Ganges River flows through Varanasi. And so he went, I'm sure. And that's where they say that the first Sangha was born, in Varanasi. So that's why the lay people, I think, were taught in the Varanasi area. And then he goes up to Deer Park, and it used to be this wooded area. And he finds the 5 guys who at first, they say, were like kind of rude to him. But then he said, heck no, you can't talk that way, you know. And then he taught them. They very quickly became, you know, they listened to everything he said, and they say within 2 months they became arhats themselves, so awakened. Next. Oh, there we go. And there's the Ganges. Beautiful Ganges River. And it's one of my favorite places to go. I just love it. And it's such a magical place. It's big, huh? And there's the burning ghats. This is where they've been burning people for 3,000 years, cremating them. Apparently, Varanasi is the place that you want to die. And if you die in Varanasi and are cremated in Varanasi, they say that your karma is you're completely free. But people are also coming there to bathe in the river, do their ceremonial bathing and their actual regular everyday bathing. And they say if you bathe in the river that you purify all your karma. So it's really interesting for me to be around, because I've bathed in the Ganges many, many times, like ceremonially, but I'm not a Hindu. So that's not necessarily my belief system. But I honor it so deeply in others while I'm there that I can literally feel, it's so tangible. That's why I'm doing this presentation, to give the sense of how tangible it is when you're in this place. To honor that, they say namaste, like it's like we say, hey, how you doing, or hello, or hola. And it's I bow to that light inside of you. To me, it's like I bow to that potential for you to become awake, totally awakened, And there these people are, and I see them all the time, and they're doing this, and I know that I'm that close because I'm taking myself into that moment with them. And it's like, yes, I may not be a Hindu, and I may not believe that 100%, but I believe that you believe that 100%. So it's incredible when you're there, and so I know that it's doing that for me. It is 100% doing that for me because I believe in them. It's incredible. And so one of my favorite things to do, and what I do on the tour, it's a common thing, is we go in the early morning, a sunrise boat ride on the Ganges, and we ride actually downriver towards the Ghats. And just to see how they bring in the wood and how everything works, it's like the most organized thing you'll ever see in India besides the Kumbh Mela. And it's just so powerful to see human bodies being burnt. They're all wrapped up. In Nepal, it's different. You can actually, a lot of times, actually see the physical bodies, but less in here. I actually saw an elderly man go out on a boat with his wife, all wrapped up in her ceremonial outfit. You can't see her face or anything. And he came back 15 minutes later without her. And I was like, old school, right in the Ganges. Oh, and there's Raju. She knows Raju. He's my guy in Varanasi. Look at him. Just love him. He's my brother. So he owns 3 boats, and you'll meet him. You'll meet him. Yeah, he'll pick us up at Asigat and take us on our tour. So, yeah. Oh, I just love the animals. They just roam around. And look at, they decorate them because the cows are sacred. They don't eat cow. And then here's the temple outside of one of the hotels I stay at. And this is, a man, the caretaker. So beautiful. And drying saris on the Ganges. Washing and bathing and doing your every day. The river is this is a video. This gives you what I was just insight.
Puja.
called an arati. They're making offerings to the Ganga, to Mother Ganga, and to Shiva, and this happens every night on the Ganges. Okay, so from Varanasi, it's just 15 miles or so up to Deer Park, where he taught for the first time. So he goes from Bodh Gaya to Varanasi, from Varanasi up to Deer Park. And this is a stupa, it's called Damek Stupa, that was built, it was actually older than the Ashokan time. It was there before, it was a pile of rocks. See, after the Buddha died, which we haven't gone to because at this point he's still alive, some of his ashes were brought, some of his relics were brought to this area. And so in the old days, it was just a pile of rocks, and then now this is an older version of those modern day stupas that you see now. And a lot of times in Nepal, especially up in the hills, like you've seen them in Mustan, it's piles of rocks still, which I like. I love the rocks because those big stupas cost a lot of money, to build them. And there's some other people that came on the tour. They're from Massachusetts. And here's the ruins. So this is where they used to come. So this is where he sat and taught for the first time. So they consider this the first turning of the wheel of Dharma. So this is, if you're a Buddhist practitioner, this is a very holy place, obviously, because this is where it was set really into motion, that we all know. Yes, he probably taught those lay people, but this is when it was like, okay, this is what we're going to do. And these ruins here are left over from the monastery because he spent a lot of time in this area. People would come and they would make offerings to him, and they would build him places for him and the monks to be and to meditate, to practice. And this park is huge. See? Here's a group. That'll be us. And okay. Don't stick foil on the monument. Did you not get the memo? Apparently not. I love it. And then this guy comes along and he scrapes it off behind him. It's hilarious. It's just so funny. And look at her face. How precious is she? She's like, ooh, don't stick foil. This is another group at another angle. Oh, okay, I met Trungpa Rinpoche. So one day I'm in the park and there's Trungpa Rinpoche. I don't know who he is, but this Tibetan fella, this young Tibetan there's a university, a Tibetan university in Sarnath. And he leans over and he goes, do you know who that is? No, who is that? He's like, it's Trungpa Rinpoche. And I didn't want to ask him who, because he's whispering it, and then so I just was like, I Googled him on my phone immediately. And Trungpa Rinpoche is one of the oldest and last Trungpa Geshes from Tibet. And he has done just so much good in the world. So you can go Google him, and he's just amazing. And he built a monastery, and he also, what do you call it? The place where you learn. Anyway, a place where you can go and learn about Buddha's teachings. And it's open to Westerners too, so there's Westerners that study there. It's beautiful, and that's where the guest house is. I like to stay when I can stay there. It's just beautiful. And the 17th Karmapa, I went. So I run in. Now I'm on the circuit, so I meet quite a few Rinpoches and Geshes, and the 17th Karmapa is one of them. And he was teaching, doing a 3-day teaching he does every year up here at this monastery, and he got sick. This was amazing. And so he couldn't there were 3 days of teachings, and he couldn't do the first 2 days. He was just too sick. And so he asked Trungpa Rinpoche, who's in his late 80s now, to fill in for him. And apparently I couldn't go because I had business. I was doing a tour, and we were in Bodh Gaya, and I said, hey, do you guys want to go up and hear the Karmapa teach? And they said, yeah, so we could only go on that 3rd day. And it was interesting, because Trungpa Rinpoche taught for the first 2 days, and I didn't go, but I heard that he was on fire, like he was like a teenager. And so it was just this beautiful thing. But I did get to see the 17th Karmapa teach. Now, I had met him one time before. You can go get blessings from him near Dharamsala when he's in town. And it was one of the most profound teachings I've ever been to in my life. Because here he is, and you know, at this point he's like 27, and his life has been interesting. And he just gets up there, like you or me, any of us, and he just talks about wearing yourself out and giving yourself self-care. He's like, I didn't listen to my body, and I got sick, and I couldn't teach, and I'm sorry. And he apologized to everybody. And then he talked about that for like a long time, so that he was helping us all to see how it doesn't help or serve all sentient beings if you kill yourself, whether it's in your job, with your family, with your studies, with your meditating. And it was so profound. And he said, my teacher told me I was burning myself out and I didn't listen. So it was this incredible teaching on the teacher-student relationship and about self-care. Whoa, it was deep. And it was in Trungpa Rinpoche's monastery. So here's a little video. I was like running around with my iPhone. This is him. I don't know, kids. Isn't he cute? And the little baby monks. And the tea, the butter tea. And there's some women with him too. He's surrounded by men and women, nuns and monks. Okay, so just a little more about Trungpa Rinpoche. So that day I saw him, he was on the lawn, he was doing a talk with these little baby monks. And later that day, so we found out about his monastery, and so we decided to go. We were invited to go for the morning puja. So we decided, okay, let's go to the morning puja. But you have to leave the park at sunset. So we were like, all right. But we still had a lot of energy. So we walked over to the monastery. And there he was. And he came right up to us, introduced himself to us, like right up to us, didn't hesitate. His guys were like behind him, and he just, and it was just like, welcome to my home. You are invited, and it was just so beautiful. I'm just in love with that guy. And so we did go to the puja the next morning. Real nice biscuits. So this is more of the ruins that you'd see if you come. But I like to show the pictures to see how lovely and lush and green it is and how peaceful it is. And there's my friend Larry looking. There's an Ashoka Stupa pillar, part of one here. And then this is, we're standing here in front of, this was built by a Sri Lankan who, there's relics inside of there. And it's right next door to the Dhamek Stupa. So those are the two places I like to go, either just the park or the stupa. So, okay, so what happens after in the Buddha's life? So now here we are. He's taught for the first time. The first turning of the wheel has happened. And a lot goes on. For 45 years, the Buddha taught. 45 years of teaching. What would his life been like if he just was like, I'm not going to teach this. So 45 years go by. A lot happened. He spent a lot of time in that area that we looked at on the map. He went back to, he had made a lot of promises to people, like I'll come back after I reach my enlightenment, after I reach enlightenment, and he did. And then in one of the times he was in one of these villages, he gets a notice from his father saying, okay, you're enlightened, now come home. So he does. He goes back to Kapalavastu. So it's funny, Andrea, she always asks me, how long does it take to get there? And I'm like, 2 months by foot! Because It took the Buddha 2 months to walk all the way from like the Bug Guy area to Lumbini. That's what I think. I'm like, I don't know, traffic on a bus, but 2 months by foot. This is a funny story about the Buddha's life, which I love a lot, and I think is really important to us as humans in our lives now. So he goes back to his father's kingdom, right, to the castle. And, his father prepared meals for all the monks that came with him, and at this point there's like thousands. So he hears that his son is out there begging, and he's like, you can't do that. You're a Shakya. Shakyas don't do that. Do not beg for their food. And he said, Buddhas do. He said, we beg for our food. And I thought to myself, I'm on the internet a lot, and there's a lot of people out there teaching, the awakening, whatever, however they teach it. They're not all Buddhists, it's not the only path to enlightenment. And I thought to myself, well, how many of them are begging for their meals every day? That is, when this came to me like a year and a half after I'd been doing this, and I was like, wow, that story about the father, and he was like, we don't do that. Shakyas don't do that. And he's like, I do. A Buddha does. This Buddha does. And these people with me, we beg. And it's just like, there's so much in that to me, because, and I still haven't, I'm still in my process, so it still has more to wake up inside of me. He didn't go, I don't know, there's just a lot in that for me. So then we walk, so a lot happened in 45 years, but he knew he was going to die. So he specifically wanted to die in Kushinagara, which is now Kushinagar. Because there was a man, a great man that lived there, that oversaw the area there. And he trusted him. He knew that if he died there, that he could entrust this man with his relics. And that's exactly what happened. And he knew exactly, gave him instructions on what to do after he died and with his relics. And it was to his disciples and to 8 families. Because, he's a smart guy, that Buddha, that's Siddhartha. Shakyamuni Buddha is a smart guy. So this is the area where, and you can see the ruins here because this was another place where they would, over the thousands of years of the Buddha's life, way after he's dead, there were still big places where people studied the awakening experiment. So in here, there's a huge statue of a sleeping Buddha. And there it is. And this kind of gives you an idea of how big it is because everybody's meditating. And, it's funny. People come and they go, and I watch people come and go and come and go and come and go. Very few people sit and do this. And I usually sit against the wall here. I like the corner over there and over there. And I meditate. And I meet other people who go there just to meditate. It's really interesting. But a lot of people come and they take their pictures and they go. It's really interesting. And then they do have talks out on the lawn. There's a huge area here to do that. It's just fun. I had an experience in this room actually. Write a book about all the experiences I've had. I can't imagine how many I'll have by the time I'm done with this. With the caretaker of the statue. There's your feet. You asked for the footsteps and I was thinking about the feet shot. So from this spot, we go to this spot, right? So this is where there's a mound of rocks. It's a big mound of rocks, right? It's gotten bigger over the years. This is where he was cremated. They bathed his river in the Haryana River that's right next door. And then they say this is where the ceremony happened. I'm sure, who knows exactly, but this is right next to the river because in those days, that's what they do. Even at the burning ghats and at Pashupati in Nepal, they dunk the body in the river and then they wrap it and burn it. I'm sure in the old days they would wrap it. So again, it's another
so the rock
big
is
part.
growing?
The what?
The rock is growing?
More rocks have been added. so many things have happened. I don't like to go into the history of it, even though I'm learning more and more and more and more about the history because I'm more interested in the actual life of the Buddha and meditating and contemplating on that and how it affects my life. But 2,600 years ago was a long, and then there were wars and Hindus and Muslims and burning and destroying and being built and destroyed and built and destroyed, and this is what it is now in 2015, It's like crazy times. And who knows what it's going to be in another 50, 100 years. And here's some people on the lawn. It just gives you an idea of how big it is, right? It's huge. Everything is big. Okay, that's where we go next. So this is where the Buddha died. So officially makes it the four main places of the Buddha's life. There's actually, and that's what he said according to the Mahaparinibbana Sutta. So you can see how contemplating on what happened in his life is really amazing. Like for me in the caves, when I was sitting there and I was with Siddhartha Gautama, I never really contemplated at that level of his life before his enlightenment. What happened to me in the cave was that I understood equanimity. I understood the Buddha was not to be put up on a pedestal. He was to be looked at, and he looked at me in my eyes. And I saw the equanimity, and I saw, oh my God, I saw my own awakened self sitting in front of me. It was just in this vision, and it was interesting because in his emaciated state, like you saw that golden statue, with the Buddha, it's very androgynous. You don't see, and I was wearing my hair in a top knot that day because it was hot. And I just saw myself in him, and it was just like, I could feel the seed sprouting physically. And I mean, my job in this existence is nothing less than getting enlightened. It's not to run a tour company or to become a good meditator or to be a great daughter or to be a good person, which is all part of my journey, of course. But it's to wake up. And when that seed, it was like exponential. My life has never been the same since that day in the cave. And that's why I figure not everybody that comes to a presentation or who watches it online is going to come, all the way over to India or Nepal, but it doesn't mean that they can't be woken up to the idea that the Buddha was a man. He wasn't this myth. He was a man. And we all make up these stories about who he was. But the truth is, when he attained his enlightenment, he said that every human being, every being has equal potential to be the Buddha, a Buddha. Wake up. That's what Buddha means. And that is powerful. So whatever way that you make it to that, to understand that life is suffering, the truth of suffering, and that there's a way out, whether it's through a religion or on your own, doing something else, the fact that what I think of when I think of him is Siddhartha Shakyamuni Buddha, I think that he's like a famous person who's woken up. He's like the Angelina Jolie or Brad Pitt of like enlightenment. He's the poster child. We all know who he is. Christians know who he is. Muslims know who he is. Atheists know who he is. You see him in clothing stores. Jesus, in New York City, you see him everywhere. I see him everywhere. Like, he is everywhere. Even my sister's house has a statue of the Buddha, And it's like, he's just everywhere. And what he represents isn't this, he represents that you, if you're not perfectly happy, can see things differently. If you suffer at all, there is another way. And you just need to seek it within yourself. In Christianity, wasn't that the Jesus who said you must find the kingdom within? The kingdom is within, right? So I encourage people to go inward. For a long time I was seeking it out, and it took a lot of time before I understood it at a deeper level. And this particular experience for me was like the home run, because after sitting in the cave, it's a cave, and being there eye to eye with him, I can only say it was eye to eye. Having that experience, nobody can take that away from me. That's mine. I nourished that seed. That's why I'm like, it was the best time and money I ever spent, to go over there. And so that's what I do. I encourage people to either contemplate on his life story or to actually come over. And India and Nepal, you know, you can go on your own. You don't need a tour for sure. But I offer that for people to make it comfortable as I can for people, and in a reasonable amount of time, so that they can take 2 weeks off of work or whatever they need to do. And so that's what I do with my company, and that's what I'm doing, you know, with Hector. Is it's a pointing out, and it's a taking people out of their comfort zone and seeing, you know, because it's actually happening. It's not a myth, it's real, and it's happening in you now. And so I think that it's probably getting late, so I'm not going to go into my Nepal version. Is it late? Anybody have?
It's up there. It's 9.
It's,
Oh,
17.
9:17. So, does anybody have any questions that they want to ask? I could go into, I have slides on Nepal I was going to show, because the Buddha's from Nepal. Okay, it wasn't Nepal back in those days, it was just some territory. But this is a place called Bodha, which has the largest stupa on the planet, and it's like this magical wonderland that Hector has been to, in which 108 lives. Have you been?
Yeah.
Oh, you have been there. Have you been to India?
I was in New Delhi for hours.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
so you've
that
gone
doesn't count.
Way of late, but no.
Yeah.
Okay. So, yeah, India is a completely different thing. Like with
Yeah.
Peter, I was like, don't worry, Peter, we're almost into Nepal. I mean, it was a daily countdown, and he had been to India before. He's just, I call it, he processes a lot of prana in India.
Yeah.
But Nepal is like this, like, I just, the word aqua just came to me, which is funny because, like, that's, in Spanish it's agua, you know, it's like water.
Yeah.
And it's the Himalayas, you know, the Himalayas used to be the bottom of the ocean, and now it's the highest mountain in the world. And it's like you can find shells up there, you know, or around, and the sky, it looks like the ocean, you know, it's just got a different energy. But yeah, so on my tours, we go from where the Buddha was born in Lumbini over to Kathmandu, unless people want to go Upton, which is another story. And Buddhism is very strong in Nepal, and I love living over there because I'm constantly surrounded by people, in other words, bathing in the Ganges. You know, it's a good way to say that. It's a constant reminder of who I am and what I'm doing in this world. And I love it, and I'm just very connected to the culture over there and the people, and it feels like home. The Himalayas is my home. So, yeah. So is Rockport, Massachusetts. It's like the Himalayas in Rockport, too. It's the same sky, I think. It's like the reflection off of the ocean. It's something about the sky. Yeah, it's really interesting. So, but now it's getting late, so do you want to see more slides or ask more questions?
Shows a couple of them,
Yeah.
Paul. Yeah. Just a few.
Oh! I think this is a video. People circumambulating the stupa.
And currently they're doing the top of the stupa. Again, they've removed the whole top, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All of it.
Down to the
After
eyes.
the crack.
So this is the area around the stupa. It's awesome. There's so many great restaurants and so many great people, and it's just like, it's my favorite place. So there's the top of the stupa. They're redoing that because it was affected in the earthquake. So some of these slides I'm going into, so there's these benches. I love these benches. It's where people congregate and talk, and peacock feathers. Malas. Bell storages. Oh my baby home, Ganesh. It's like blessing cords. Tatiana. Okay, so then here's the Swayambhu. You've been to Swayambhu,
Yeah.
Okay. So these are the stairs all the way up to Swayambhu. You've been there too. This is the monkey temple. So this is a very sacred spot. This got affected in the earthquake too. Look at that picture. Look at can you see the bird? And I won't go into the big story, but that's a big dorje right there. Lions. So you can either walk up the stairs, or you can walk halfway up the stairs and take the shortcut through the woods, or you can get dropped off on the backside. I do all three. It's good exercise. Those stairs are intense. I do a Kathmandu Valley city tour. Not a city tour, definitely a city tour, but I do a Tibetan Buddhist deity tour, which is really profound. You need a week to do that. It's good to have a week, 3 days you can do it. Magical. Monkeys. These are my friends. So I volunteer with an organization called Green Soldiers, and we pick up trash. And these are some of my fellow soldiers and friends. Nandu. Rishka. So this is Pashupati. So this is fun because I didn't put any like close-up pictures of the burning ghats because I was told you shouldn't take pictures, even though I have pictures, because I had already taken them and video before they were like, no. So, but Pashupati is like a free-for-all. Like Nepal, it's a completely different story, and it is incredible. And if you are in our lineage of Tibetan Buddhism, there are caves where Naropa and Tilopa meditated. So that's when I do the kind of week-long tour. We do the Vajrayogini, Padmasambhava. I do a Padmasambhava tour, Vajrayogini, Naropa, Tilopa, the Pumtingpas. I mean, it's incredible. So, here you go. They do less dressing on the bodies. Did you have a question? Did you go to Pashupati?
Yeah, you're not supposed to put any photo like that.
Really?
Yeah.
They never say anything.
Yeah. Like with the Hindu and the Baba said in Nepal.
Really? No
Yes,
one
the
ever
who
said
"Oh my
anything
God."
to me.
Like you're not, you have to respect their
They
body.
don't put up any photos. They don't put up any. And there were Indians taking pictures and Nepalis
You're not
taking
supposed to.
pictures.
You can delete it when you get a chance.
So this is just looking at that area. I've had some amazing experiences here. I like to go here. I go here a lot, personally. So here is the cave where Naropa and Tilopa. Look at that.
What month is that? You have a lot of water.
Huh?
What month?
Oh, that was. I don't know. It must have been February. This is all overgrown. I walked up those stairs like expecting to go meditate. It says meditation, but it was like a dead end. So I was like, I'll meditate here then. Oh, Vishnu Dai. Larry died. Babas. They're like, come to me. No money. And then I was like, really? And then I got into these debates with them, and they were not like in a good way, healthy debates. And I was like, about the emptiness of the sadhu. And then I was like, I'm a sadhu too. I had so much fun with those guys, and then I did give them money. Because that's what they do for a living, I respect that. So this area, now the rest of these pictures, this area was heavily affected by the earthquake. So I'm guessing a lot of this isn't there anymore.
Really? That one?
Oh yeah.
Oh.
I don't know. I won't know until I see it. All of this stuff though. This was my daily walk. I knew the earthquake happened on a Saturday, so I would have been up at Monkey Temple. I knew exactly where I would have been.
Mm.
So it was interesting because I normally do a daily walk around that time, and yeah, so it was interesting. It was a Saturday. I was in Berlin during that time. Guys, so all this is, it'll be interesting to go back. Get all the bicycle rickshaws. Angelina Jolie, look at that picture of her. Isn't that beautiful?
Cigarette.
I just love that photo.
I
I just love this. I just love
What a
Nepal.
good-
Like posters, plastic toys, and like I'm always like, who buys this stuff? Is that Elvis? Elvis. So this is another stupa in Kathmandu. There's all these like hidden spots. It's amazing. It's amazing. Like I find new spots all the time. I'm like, how could I not have known this was here? It's huge. It's like nothing small. So this was one of the famous pictures after the earthquake. Do you guys remember this statue?
Mm-hmm.
Because it survived, but the buildings around it are all gone.
Mm-hmm.
So you can just kind of see this is just a moment in time, right? Now this wasn't the first earthquake that's happened since these buildings were built. We were expecting an earthquake. They happen every 70 years, but you don't know what's going to happen. You know, I mean, so up until this year, all those buildings survived, and then this last one, they did not, which is kind of a miracle if you think about it that they actually survived that long, because it is a highly seismic activity area. And they knew it was going to be big because there hadn't been a lot of releases. You know, like San Francisco will get tremors. You know. Oh, that's a statue. If you come, you'll see it. It's from Bodh Gaya to Varanasi. We're taking the train. You won't see it. This is where I have lunch. I just love this Buddha statue. It's so beautiful. That's that. That was it.
Thank you.
Yeah. So is that getting you all psyched now?
I'm so glad you have all the photo before, after the earthquake.
I know, right?
It just brought me back to like,
Yeah. So the impermanent nature. So I want to quote the Buddha. The last thing that the Buddha said, they say. In one translation, it was said. All composite things are perishable. Strive for your own liberation with diligence. I mean, really? He went out with that? That's amazing. But they also said that he said, not the last thing he said, but follow no leader. You know? He was like, follow no leader. I thought that was interesting because there's all these like leaders, and have you noticed like in lately like but what you gotta? There's never an absolute. Like, what does that mean to you? It's like follow your own. Like nobody else can do it for you. Everybody's just pointing out. So it's not like the self-existent being is like leading you astray. You have led yourself astray when you're not. You need to be diligent in your own awakening process. It's so incredible. It's like you are the only one who can save yourself. Wow, I mean, when I did that pilgrimage for the first time, I had been going through a lot of stuff. And when, about Buddhism, about emptiness, about karma, as you should, as a good Buddhist. You should be questioning it all the time, right? Question everything. Remember what the Buddha said? Don't believe a word I say, go figure it out for yourself. And it just really helped me to see in kind of a joyful way, too. It was very deep and transformational for me personally, but in a joyful way where I got to see, I get to see, I should say, how different cultures see the teachings differently and how it's come down and how they kind of made it their own, because it's always about making it your own, And if you're not making it your own, then it's not really authentic to you. You know, that's why you can tell stories or teach or whatever, but it's like, well, what does that mean to you, right? And so when I saw, wow, oh my gosh, that's where they get that, that's where that idea comes from. You can see history and how it's made itself. And this is how I'm learning it. And this is, oh my God, and I've already been teaching. And these people are getting it from me. And what's it going to be like in 1,000 years after I put my like stamp on it, you know? And it's just really exciting. Yeah, it's really exciting. And you're in a foreign country, you know, which is always exciting.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's always exciting being in somebody else's backyard, you know, seeing how other people eat and how they do things and how they shop for their groceries and how they go to the bathroom and what happens when you get sick. Where do you go? There's I should have put the picture in, but in Sarnath, where the Buddha taught for the first time, I showed you Trangu Rinpoche, and there was some pictures of his monastery. I just didn't tell you that was it. But you can walk. The walk from the monastery back into town is really cool. And you go by this guy with a cart that says pharmacy. So what do you do when you get sick? You go to the guy with the cart. I love it. I mean, not always. But the pharmacists, they know everything. They'll take your temperature, they'll take they'll take your blood sugar, they'll do whatever. They know a lot, and they will. If you're not like deathly ill, they'll fix you right up, and they're so kind, and they all speak English, and they're just so lovely. They're like what did I need last time I was there? A hot water bottle. It was a hot water bottle because I like to put hot water in it and put it in my bed. And I didn't have mine, and I was like, it's cold out, and I was like, I really want hot water. So I went to the pharmacist, and I was like, I need one of those hot water bottles. And he was like, okay, I've got this one and this one, you know. Because I'd gone to him before for like allergy medicine, ibuprofen, Band-Aids, face masks, you know. Like he's just got all the goods, you know. And there he is, and he's always happy to see you, you know. Then there's the Ayurvedic pharmacist, and there's the Tibetan doctors. They're all really, really great people. I've just had a very positive experience. And people have been doing this for a really long time, so you're not going to really come to them with anything new.
Right.
You know, that foreigners have been going over there with their sensitive stomachs to curry. You know? So now they've got it down, because, you know, if they don't want foreigners to get sick, you know, because that makes people not want to come. So they're actually really good. And in Nepal especially, I mean, I know you guys have experienced it. Boy, they know how to cook. Especially, you know, like Western food, you know. I like eating in Nepal. I like just dal bhat. I'm a dal bhat person. India, there's a lot of choices on that menu. Rice and dal. So that's the story of the Buddha. And this is why I think it's important to bring it up. When I did that, I said I was just going to go home and just tell everybody. And that's how it came. I'm like, well, let's start bringing people. Because it just made sense. So I just started doing it. I just like went online and just made a Facebook page and started doing it. And that's how it started. You just do it. And now it's turned into this other thing, which is still just doing it. So I invite you all, you and you and you, to come walk or take a bus or a train in the footsteps of the Buddha.
Thank you.
Tashi de Lake.
Tashi Day Lake.
Tashi de Lake.
Thanks so
I
much.
recorded it too.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
I hope when I was animated.